just joined in. Doreen, can you see if you can elevate Peter?
Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hi there. Good.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Hey, Chip. How are you?
I'm here. How you doing?
Doing well. Doing well.
Good. You can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. How's everyone doing? That good.
We're all here. We're doing great.
Sincerity, I can just feel it.
Oh, my parents got their first vaccine dose, so I'm very happy to hear about that.
Excellent.
Yes.
I got mine last Friday at Scarborough Downs.
Oh, how was that? How was it there at Scarborough Downs?
They're so organized. There's so many volunteers there. It's just
Cool.
incredible. But the only problem is not enough vaccinations.
I know.
Actually, doses. And,
Yeah.
But yeah, they're ready to catch up. I mean, they can obviously handle it.
Mhm. They have the weapons. They just need the ammo.
Brian, I'm not sure if I'm on camera. This is Peter. And I'll be honest, none of you want to see me anyway. I'm not that good looking man, but
I mean, the Legos are really pretty awesome, I will say.
yeah, that's my son.
That's
the
a good
Zoom,
look.
we share a Zoom login, so yes,
Nice.
We have that going for us.
Well, at least it's not a cat.
Well, and if you, I don't know what the issue is. It's probably on your end as far as what you've got your camera setting set to. But
yeah, I'm gonna try and see what I can do here.
Yeah. Yep. As long as your audio is coming through and we can hear you loud and clear, should be fine.
What we do try to do is we try to keep ourselves muted until we're ready to speak. That way, any background noise or feedback is cut down.
Understood. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So not a problem.
And I'll do my best to try to explain as we go, kind of where we are in the process and next steps and so on. If you do have a question at any point, though, Peter, please don't hesitate to ask.
Sure.
Questions are welcome, more than welcome. Let's give it another. Were we expecting our other new board member as well?
He may not be able to attend, so I think if we have a quorum, Mr. Chair, we probably should proceed.
Okay, let's give it 1 more minute to 7:03, if that's all right.
I'm just checking my phone to see if I've received any texts from any of the other board members.
Okay, let's see.
I don't see any, so.
I have a point of order question, Brian, before we get started. With appeal number 2699 that we'll be reviewing for the request to reconsider, do we approve the draft written decisions for the appeal? Because how we go on, we approve the past meetings, approval of draft written decisions for appeals heard last month. Do we still go ahead and do that because that was the snapshot in time of our opinion last month? Oh, you're muted.
I think you mean appeal number 2695.
Excuse me. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, I think what we would do is table the approval of that until we dispense of the issue of the request for a motion to reconsider.
Excellent. Yep. So what we'll do is, regardless of the outcome, we will have the approval of that step. The approval of the draft written decisions will be after we hear appeal number 2695 request to reconsider. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we might as well get started then. Is everybody all set? Okay. Have we confirmed that we're recording?
Yeah, it says
We
it on.
are recording.
We are. Excellent. Thank you,
Thank you,
Doreen.
Doreen.
Okay. Well, welcome to the February 10th regular meeting of the Scarborough Zoning Board of Appeals. The meeting will now come to order. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, the public has a right to hear everything that is being said and to view all of the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chairperson, which is myself, if you are unable to hear or see the proceedings. The board works from a prepared agenda and will take up tonight's items in the following order. After I describe the process of my opening remarks, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll go through our roll call, approval of last month's minutes, and we will we will vote on the approval of our draft written decisions for appeal number 2699 on behalf of Patricia and Curtis Degan, excuse me. Then we'll go through appeals, appeal number 2695, request to reconsider, and then appeal number 2700, special exception. And at the very end of the meeting, we'll have zoning board comments. With each, in each instance of an appeal that is being heard, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with each of the criteria or provisions of the application of the appeal. Excuse me. The board will ask questions as necessary to understand the nature of the appeal as fully as possible. When all testimony has been heard, the chair will close the record and the board will adopt findings of fact for each criterion of the appeal and vote to determine if the applicant has met the burden of proof necessary to meet that criterion. It is important to note that if any of the appeal or special exception criteria has not been met, the board must deny the appeal or application. In many cases, the appellant or the landowner may have a personal problem which prompted the request for variance. Please understand that this is not legally relevant to the appeal, no matter how sympathetic the board may be to the appellant's situation. After the board votes on merits of each criterion, a motion may be made to approve the appeal, and if there is a second, discussion will follow. The board will then state conclusions of law based on the findings of fact to support a decision on the motion. In most cases, the board will request that the staff prepare a draft written decision based on the stated findings and conclusions, as well as the audio, video, and supporting materials in the record for approval at the next meeting. As a general note, a general vote will then be taken on the appeal. If the majority of the voting members present vote in the affirmative, the appeal is approved. The majority of the voting members vote in the negative, the appeal is denied. The board's decision stands as the date as the vote was taken, regardless of the approval of a final written decision. And I'll state for the record tonight, Mr. Bork, myself, Ms. Shoup, Mr. Karen, and Mr. Howe are voting members. The five folks on the board represent a quorum. And excuse me, is it Mr. Freilinger, Peter?
It's Freilinger, James.
Freilinger. Thank you. You are an alternate member of the board tonight. You are speaking and asking questions and performing all of the duties as any other board member here, with the exception that you cannot vote. You are an alternate member of the board, and should one of the regular voting members be absent during the meeting, you would take their place as a voting member of the board.
Understood, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Generally speaking, appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with Superior Court of State of Maine, except as otherwise provided by law, within 45 days of this board's decision. Also, if anyone present at this hearing may wish to preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that this board's record evidences your appearance this evening and the basis for your support or opposition. So if you wish to file something with Superior Court, we need to know that you were physically here or virtually here at this meeting. Again, we remind everyone that this is a public proceeding and you have the right to hear and see what is happening. All persons speaking will be asked to first you state your name and your address or affiliation, and then all board members and interested parties are asked to direct their questions through the chair, which is me. So at this time, if you all please rise or stand with me and state the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So may we go through roll call, please?
Okay. Mr. Bork,
Present.
Mr. Karen,
Present, excuse me.
Mr. Howe,
I am here.
Ms. Shoup,
I'm here.
Mr. Freilinger,
Present.
Mr. Oh my gosh.
Me,
Oh yes, Mr. Hebert.
I'm here as well.
I'm trying to remember Alan's last name and I can't.
Foster.
Thank
Foster.
you. Mr. Foster, not here.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, with that, do I have, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes from our last month's meeting, January 13th, 2021. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and are there any questions, concerns, or corrections that folks on the board would like to make? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of head shakes, so that is negative. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last month?
Yes, Mr. Chair, a motion to approve the meetings from January 13th.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Bork. Do I have a second?
Motion to second.
Okay, that's Mr. Karen. Thank you. All those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Aye.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup.
Yes.
I will vote in the affirmative as well. And Mr. Freilinger probably abstained from this vote since you weren't here at the past meeting.
Yes, that would be appropriate, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you. Obviously, of course, if you have thoroughly read through and watched last month's recording, you can vote to agree or disagree with the minutes as they are presented. Right now, what we're going to do is move to number 5 on the agenda. We're going to skip the approval of appeal number 2695 draft written decisions. We're going to wait till we discuss that appeal. And we're going to go to appeal number 2699, the practical difficulty variance appeal by Northeast Civil Solutions on behalf of Patricia and Curtis Dagon. Do I have, do I have a motion to approve the draft written decisions of 2699?
Yes, Mr. Chair, motion to approve the draft version of appeal number 2699.
Great. And do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Excellent. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none. Mr. Bork, how do you vote?
Yes.
Excellent. Mr. Karen?
Aye.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Shoup?
Yes.
I will vote aye as well. And Mr. Freilinger?
I will vote aye.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to go into the appeals. So first off, we're going to discuss appeal number 2695. This is a request to reconsider the appeal 2695 from last month. It's a practical difficulty variance by, Perkins Thompson on behalf of Wix Rossiter and Layla Schuler, 9 Pinewood Circle, Assessors Map U017, Lot 72. At this point, what we are going to do in this process, since this is a motion to reconsider, and we don't get many of these very often, what happens is the appellant is going to have an opportunity to speak and make their case as to why we need to reopen this appeal for reconsideration. We're going to allow them to speak. They're not allowed to provide the evidence of what is in there to change our minds on it, just the reasons why, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, the reasons why we need to reopen this for reconsideration.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct. It's just the board is being asked if they would make a motion to reconsider the appeal. And so at this point, as you said, Mr. Chair, we're not taking evidence. We're simply listening to their reasoning why we should reopen it. And I believe that that Attorney Joe Savitsky had provided basically those reasons in a letter to the board, which you should have in your packet. And that's basically what we're looking at right now. We're not going to hear any new evidence until the board either decides to make a motion, which they may decide to do, or they may decide not to make a motion. They may make a motion and it should be seconded. If it doesn't get seconded, then it dies for lack of second. If it is seconded, then there can be discussion, more discussion, and then if the vote to reconsider is approved, then we can hear more testimony or more evidence from Mr. Rossiter or any of his representatives. So that's how that works.
And I would note as well, since I believe Mr. Bork, you were the one who made the motion on this originally last month, you would have to make the motion this time in order, the motion to reconsider would have to come from you.
I'll pass.
Okay, so with that being said, Mr. Longstaff, do we invite in Mr. Savisky to explain why we need to hear this for reconsideration?
Yes, I think at this point we can elevate Mr. Savisky, we can elevate Mr. Rossiter, but whoever's going to speak is going to be the one that's going to give us the reasons why the board should reconsider.
Yeah, and we see Mr. Savisky right there. How are you, sir?
Hi, good, Mr. Chair. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
So point of order before I begin, this is, I think you've made this clear already, but you are not at this point entertaining the additional evidence that we would like to provide. You're simply making a judgment as to whether you should grant the motion to reconsider.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I think the reason simply is that Mr. Rossiter was in attendance at the last meeting, but due to technical difficulties with the Zoom virtual meeting platform, he was unable to speak. I believe you, Mr. Chair, recognized that he wanted to speak and attempted to elevate him to a panelist status, and that didn't happen. And frankly, I think when you have an applicant wishing to speak and provide evidence with respect to an application concerning his property, I mean, it raises questions of due process, him not being able to speak, being denied the opportunity to speak. And I would remind the board that for a long time, these types of virtual meetings were not allowed under Maine law. It took the pandemic to finally convince the legislature that having public meetings in this type of forum is permissible given the circumstances. So with that in mind, the due process implications of Mr. Rossiter not being able to speak and provide relevant evidence as to particularly with respect to the criteria on which the appeal was ultimately denied. That would be the reason in support of our request for reconsideration, not to mention the fact that we only had 4 board members present, which I realized was a quorum, but we have an additional voting member of the board here tonight. So one of the criteria ended up in a 2-2 tie. So for all those reasons, we would ask the board to grant our request for reconsideration. Thanks, and happy to answer any questions.
At this point, before I don't necessarily want to go into discussion on the topic of it. The discussion happens if a motion is made to open this for reconsideration. So I will entertain a motion to reopen this for reconsideration if there is a move on the motion or a second or a second. Okay. I just want to confirm that no one is making the motion to reopen this for reconsideration. I will admit that unfortunately, due with the technology that we're forced to cope with during the pandemic, that things have been very, very difficult here. But one item I will point out that it was a 4-0. It was a majority vote, unanimous, that the application did not pass, and there were 2 points in the application that did not go through. So I guess at this point, if there is no motion to be made for reconsideration, Brian, do we move on from this point?
So, if I may, Mr. Chair, a final point, and then I'll be quiet. So the evidence.
Yeah, one final point.
The evidence that Mr. Rossiter wants to present directly relates to a criteria on which the board found was not met. And then the other criteria, which was a 2-2, ended in a 2-2 split. We now have an additional board member here that could provide the deciding vote. So we wouldn't be here wasting the board's time if we didn't think there was a realistic chance that the result could be different this time around.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Savisky. I appreciate that. With that said, I'll ask one last time. Any folks on the board want to reopen this for reconsideration?
Mr. Chair, I have no desire to make a motion to open this for reconsideration. I do feel like the applicant does deserve some sort of explanation, and I don't know if we can make comments as to regards to that, or if we're simply just going to say no.
Well, what we can do is if you do make the motion for reconsideration, it is a first and a second, then that goes into discussion. And then we can state the reasons why that we voted the way we did. And then when we go to a vote, you may vote either yay or nay to open it to allow it to pass. We're voting for reconsideration. If the vote for reconsideration passes, then we reopen the application and we go through the findings of fact again. If we reopen the motion for reconsideration and we just have a discussion about it, and it's just a motion whether or not to reopen it, and at that point the board can discuss the reasons why you would vote yes or no.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Should there be a motion and a second, would this be an appropriate time for the appellant to share the additional information, or would that wait until an approved to reconsider?
It would be their information would be provided after an approved motion to reconsider if that vote passed. If that vote fails, then this stops and we proceed to the next appeal.
And I would just, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd just remind the board that even if you made the motion, seconded it, and improved it, and the applicant was able to provide his evidence, it doesn't automatically mean that that's going to change your minds. It's just hearing what wasn't able to be said at the original meeting. And honestly, in all fairness, I have no vote here. I'm only staff. I think given these times and given the technology and given the opportunity, I would certainly encourage the board to consider just allowing that due process to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to change your mind. It might change your mind, it might not, but allowing the due process to happen is not a bad thing. I don't know what anybody's reticence is about this, and that's not my call. I'm only here to support you. So I just would offer that. And again, there's about 5 ways this thing can die and only 1 way that it can succeed. So
thank you, Mr. Longstaff. I will state if we don't proceed further from this point, then our findings of fact from last month's application and the vote that was taken at that point will stand.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Freilinger.
I'd make an observation. Just given the nature of the request by Mr. Savisky, which is largely a technical issue, it may be appropriate to have a motion and a vote on the motion to clarify the board's approach to technical difficulties in the future, and have that on the record. With no comment on the findings of fact or on the potential future submissions of evidence, it just may be appropriate to have a discussion of that so that we're clarifying for future appellants what they might need to expect in terms of going forward.
No, I understand. That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Peter. I would say let's have that discussion during the zoning board comments portion of the meeting at the very end. Mr. Bork, were you going to say something?
Yes. Taking into consideration Mr. Longstaff's guidance, I will therefore make a motion to reconsider.
Okay, okay, Mr. Karen seconds. Okay, now we are in the discussion phase. So the motion has been made. Now we are in the discussion phase of the motion. Now we may discuss the reasons why we should reconsider or should not reconsider. Does anyone like any comments to start? Mr. Bork.
All right. First, I'll start with saying that, the vote, which was a tie, okay, there was warning given prior to that vote. that a tie would result in a negative outcome. And the person representing Mr. Rossiter, his attorney, knew that. He had the opportunity to request that the whole issue be tabled until a future meeting. And we know that's been done in past appeals. So the attorney had the opportunity to do that. I would further state that as the representative of Mr. Rossiter, it was incumbent upon the attorney to be fully aware of all the issues and all the evidence that needed to be presented. In the past, we've always said you get one shot, and that's it. And I realize we had technical difficulties involved here, but we had an attorney representing the appellant, and the attorney really should have been prepared to request it to be tabled, and also to, when it was obvious that Mr. Rossiter could not say what he wanted to say, he should have then again requested it be tabled. He failed to do so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bork. Ms. Shoup?
I think Mr. Bork covered a lot of the concerns that I had before. I think it is important for generally moving forward, folks to know that, if you have a public comment that you want to make, try to get it ahead of time. You have the hand up feature, the chat feature, things like that. I think it's really difficult to try to open it back up when an applicant comes with such great representation. They had a really good application. It was very thorough. I think they did a very good job, presenting their argument. It was just not a winner. And I think it's a slippery slope to try to open it back up when maybe when you do that, I'd like to try to remind people we are a board of, volunteers, and this is our time. And I think we did a really good job the first time around, and a quorum is a quorum. And I think they knew that going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Karen.
Pardon me. Of the two issues raised within the request to reconsider, I think Mr. Bork spoke to both very well, one of which was a clear 2-2, and with the information provided at the beginning of the appeal, it was made clear that the tie would result in a failure. But the second part, with the additional information that may be heard from Mr. Rossiter, I would just make it a point to anyone listening that any information should be included in the initial application and packet. I understand that there are technological issues, but just something to keep in mind in the future.
Other comments from board members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Freilinger.
Yes.
I just observed, obviously there's a technical issue with me being able to appear visually on this meeting, so I'm particularly sensitive to the appellant's discussion. But on that point, to Ms. Shoup's point, there are a variety of ways to both inform counsel ahead of the meeting and to participate as well as you can, even if video is not enabled or other issues come about. And I think it's important for the public to know that in a time which is perhaps exceptional but may become more normal, that it's incumbent upon us all to make sure that both the application is as detailed as possible, our representation is as informed and is as capable as possible, and that we're ready with backup alternatives, including potentially asking items to be tabled for future consideration if there's an issue. So I'd encourage the voting members of the board tonight to consider that as a consider it.
Thank you, Mr. Freilinger. Any other comments from the board? Okay, so we're going to go to a vote, and this is a vote for reopening appeal number 2695 for reconsideration. Mr. Bork, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Karen, how do you vote?
No.
Ms. Shoup, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Howe, how do you vote? Unmute yourself. Say it one more time. Something appears to be working with your phone, but that was a no. And I will vote no on this as well. So unfortunately, we will not be reopening appeal number 2695, Mr. Savisky or Mr. Rossiter. Our apologies and thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Okay, well, we are going to move on to, that being said, we're going to go to the approval of the draft written decisions for the appeals heard at the January 13, 2021 meeting. That is for appeal number 2695, the practical difficulty that we were just discussing. Everyone has had a chance to review the findings of fact that were taken last month into your consideration. And Mr. Bork, do we have a motion on the floor to accept the approval of the draft written decisions?
Yes, Mr. Hebert. Motion to approve appeal number 2695 as written.
Okay, Mr. Karen?
Motion to second.
Excellent. And all those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I will vote yes as well. Great. Thank you all. We're going to move on to our newest appeal tonight, appeal number 2700, special exception appeal, home occupation by Leanne M. Denham, 4 Leah Lane, assessor's map R023 lot 1006. Excuse me. And if Doreen and Brian, if one of you would mind bringing in Ms. Dennant, great.
While that's happening, I'll just give the board a quick rundown on the proposal. Appeal number 2700 is a special exception appeal. The applicant is proposing to establish a home-based baking business in her existing dwelling at 4 Leah Lane. It is her primary residence. She does not wish or intend to sell any product at the residence, nor does she intend to employ anyone that is not a resident of the dwelling. She has provided plans that show that the area that she's going to use is not more than 20% of the home. And again, it's a home-based business. You'll both, the board will be reviewing section 4I criteria for special exceptions, as well as section 9V home occupation criteria.
Okay. Ms. Denon, can you hear me?
I can.
Excellent. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Denon, yep.
Denon. Excellent. Thank you. Well, as we're getting started here, if you could tell the board about the application that you're submitting and what your goals are here.
For a home-based baking business, as you had stated, it's really very in the very beginning stages. I'm hoping to be ready to be able to participate in the Scarborough Farmers Market by the summer. So it's really just a startup, and I don't have a business plan set. I'm just taking baby steps at this point, and I knew that this was the first step that I needed to take in order to accomplish that. So.
Excellent. Great. So what I'll do at this point is I'll ask you each the questions, the standards for special exceptions, A through F, and A through I, and you can just read the answers that you provided in the application directly back to us. This is more so that we have it audio recorded for the record, in case we were to pull this for a meeting recording back up in the future.
Okay.
So I'll start with letter A. The proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation.
Correct. The home occupation, which is baked goods, will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation, as the home occupation is analogous to normal functions of a residential kitchen.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
B, yes, Mr. Bork.
Oh, pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Of course, Mr. Karen.
Just a question as we move forward. Is now the appropriate time to ask any clarifying questions?
Yes. So thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Karen. So, Mr. Freilinger, for your information and for all the board members and for our appellant as well, at any point between now and when we close the public hearing, we may ask questions of the applicant at any point, but please direct them through me just so that we can help facilitate the conversation. Just sort of raise your hand, grab my attention, and we'll answer those questions at that point. Good question. Thank you, Mr. Karen.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, a follow-up.
Do you have a question?
I do have a question.
All right, shoot.
All right. Would it be possible to get an additional information about if the appellant is on a septic or town?
I am on septic.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Actually, a quick question, if I may, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Mr. Frolinger, go for it.
Given the baking, is there a venting process, or is there an industrial vent or something that will be associated with this, or is this literally just the whatever venting or whatever ventilation you have for your existing residential kitchen?
It is the existing ventilation.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, because you'll be using your home appliances, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Bork?
Just for clarification here, this is regulated by the Department of Agriculture for home baking. And there are no special requirements for venting as long as you're using, electric appliances, or if you do have gas, like a gas commercial oven, then that would require venting. But, this for normal home appliances, it's not required. It's regulated by Department of Agriculture, not by health department standards like a restaurant would be, or a commercial kitchen. It's not a commercial kitchen.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about the volume of delightful aromas coming from the bakery more than anything else.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
Lots of. Yeah.
All right, we'll go on to letter B. The proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to existing and foreseeable traffic in its vicinity.
Okay, so that's correct. The home occupation would not create any vehicular or pedestrian traffic concerns, as the premises is only used for baking and would not be used for retail sales.
All right, excellent.
Pardon me,
There's- Yes, please.
Just to confirm, there's no intended employees beyond yourself?
Correct.
Thanks.
Letter C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems which will be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree of municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood.
Right. So the proposed use would not create public safety concerns, as the premises would only use residential kitchen appliances. As there would be no retail space, there would be no additional pedestrian or vehicular traffic.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Denon. D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies.
Right. So the home occupation will be conducted in the kitchen within the residence and does not involve any activity that would cause sedimentation, erosion, or leaching into the ground or surface water supplies. The residence has a functioning septic system that will easily handle any wastewater created by the baking and kitchen cleanup processes.
Excellent. Thank you. Letter E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development.
So the proposed use will be contained within the existing residential space and would not have any impact on physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development.
Excellent. Okay. Letter F, if located in a shoreline zone as depicted on the Town of Scarborough official shoreline zoning map, the proposed use will comply with all the requirements of the Town of Scarborough shoreline zoning ordinance. Are you in a shoreline zone?
We are not.
Excellent. That's an easy one. Letter G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
Correct. So as the owner of the property, I would have that ability to carry out the proposed use.
Okay, excellent. Letter G, the applicant has the
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, there are no restrictive covenants on the deed, or there's no restrictions on that. And I note on the next item that you have a 60% equity interest. There's no restrictions from any other equity holders?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
No, good questions.
One point on that question.
Yes.
We don't rule on those kinds of issues. We just simply look at zoning. That's something totally separate.
Appreciate that, Mr. Bork. Thank you very much. And this is my first meeting, I'll note, to the opponent, so thank you. So
believe me, it's a learning process. I've been doing this for many years now. And it's, welcome on board, by the way.
And questions are welcome, Mr. Frelinger. So thank you for sending them over. Keep them coming. Sorry, let me adjust this here. All right, so that was letter H. Now we're going on to letter I. I believe this is the last
Pardon
one.
me,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
do you
Karen.
mind repeating, number or letter H?
Oh, we did. Sorry. Yes, because we were asking questions about G. Thank you. The applicant has letter H. The applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section.
Yep, so the applicant, that's myself, has 60% equity in the property with an available cash reserve in excess of $30,000 and is technically and financially able to comply with any reasonable conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Letter I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in their neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation.
So the home occupation will be conducted within the residence and will not generate abnormal or excessive noise by the nature of the home occupation.
Pardon me,
Excellent.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question?
Of course.
Just to check about the hours of operation, would you mind giving additional information on when those might be?
During the day, I mean, typical 9 to 5, maybe in the evening, but it's in my own kitchen, so it wouldn't have any impact on anyone in the neighborhood.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. Are there any other questions from the board at this time? Again, if you think of something, just let me know. We can ask the appellant questions all the way up until we close the public hearing. Mr. Longstaff, have we received any emails, phone calls, or letters from the public or neighbors with regard to this?
Mr. Chair, we have received nary a one email or public comment, written comment. So,
okay, excellent. Now, would this be a good time for us to transition over to the performance standards for home occupation, or do we need to go through and vote through each one of the questions first? I think we should go to the home occupation next.
sure.
Okay, so we're going to ask you the home occupation questions. That's in section 9, part 5, the performance standards, home occupations, Ms. Lennon. And so I'll just ask you the questions which you provided answers for in the back of your packet. Thank you for that. So it's going to be 1 through 12, and a few of these we could probably skip. So number 1, the occupation or profession shall be carried on wholly within the principal building or within a building accessory thereto.
That is correct, and I apologize. I'm looking for the answers that I submitted to you, and I'm not sure that I printed that off as part of my own packet.
I can actually, if you want, Mr. Chair, I can bring up the application on the screen so that Ms. Dunning can see her answers.
Let's do that, please. Thank you. That'll work.
Right.
Most of these questions are pretty straightforward anyways. So number 2,
I do. Yeah.
the home occupation shall be clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling unit for residential purposes.
I'm sorry, are we looking at number?
We're looking at number 2. So the home occupation shall be clearly incidental and secondary to use of the building. So if this is your home, this is still your primary residence, and the purpose of this residence isn't to operate a bakery. Is that correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Number 3, no more than one person who is not a resident of the dwelling shall be employed in the home occupation. So do you intend on having employees work for you?
I do not intend to have employees work for me.
Okay. Number 4, exterior signage may be permitted in accordance with the home occupation sign provisions under section 12, sign regulations subsection E. So this basically just lets you know that you are within your right, assuming that this application will pass, you can put out a sign at the end of your driveway within certain dimensions that you can work with Brian on to establish.
Okay, right. Yeah, so there's no intention to have exterior signage because there's no retail space.
Excellent. Number 5, there shall be no exterior display, no exterior storage of materials, and no other exterior indication of the home occupation or variation from the residential character of the principal building, except as expressly permitted by the district regulations of this ordinance. This prohibition shall not apply to the storage of lobster traps.
Right, so baking materials will be stored in sealed containers within the operating area of the property. Therefore, there's no exterior storage of materials and no exterior indication of the home occupation.
Excellent. Sounds like no one's even going to know that it's happening.
No.
Number 7, the traffic generated excuse me, by such home occupation shall not increase the volume of traffic so as to create a traffic hazard or disturb the residential character of the immediate neighborhood.
Right, the home occupation would not include retail space and therefore will not increase vehicular or pedestrian traffic to the residential neighborhood.
Excellent.
A quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Freilinger.
Just out of curiosity, so will you be delivering these yourselves, or you mentioned the Scarborough Market? You're not going to have a truck coming up and taking deliveries of baked goods or anything like that, I take it?
No.
Okay.
Right.
All right. We are on number 8, I believe. In addition to the off-street parking provided to meet the normal requirements of the dwelling, adequate off-street parking shall be provided for vehicles of each employee and the vehicles of the maximum number of users or customers the home occupation may attract during peak operating hours.
Right, so there will be no additional employees or retail space. Therefore, there will not be any need for off-street parking.
Excellent. Thank you. 9, the home occupation may utilize A, not more than 20% of the dwelling unit floor area, provided that for the purposes of this calculation, unfinished basement and attic spaces are not included. It may utilize unfinished attic and basement spaces and space within an accessory building totaling not more than 1,000 square feet of the floor area. And I believe you included a diagram explaining this. Is that correct?
Yes.
So looking at the building layout, you are proposing a space area equaling to 13% of the total square footage available, which is well under the 20% maximum limit that you're able to have. Does folks on the board concur with that statement? Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Bork. Let's see, let's go to number 10. Home occupations may include retail sales subject to the following limitations. A total area devoted to retail sales is limited to 400 square feet and must be fully enclosed within a building. The sale of products is limited to products and articles produced, assembled or processed on the premises. And then it goes to describe seafood, but we're not dealing with seafood here.
Right, so there will be no retail sales. And sale products will be limited to baked goods. Yeah, just baked goods produced and packaged on the premises.
Excellent. You're not selling lobsters out of here.
No.
Unknowingly.
No.
And that sort of segues into our point number 11, which I believe is not applicable. A fisherman, you are not a fisherman or a lobsterman or shellfish harvester.
I am not.
And you are not performing motor vehicle repairs or motor vehicle towing businesses at this home.
Nope, I will not.
Excellent. Mr. Longstaff, at this point, do we just take a straight vote from the board on whether all of the criteria for the home occupation are met?
As we've done in past practice, the board seems to have it seems to be okay with doing it that way. I feel that's adequate. If there were any problems with any of those criteria, would have already raised them. So I think taking them as a whole is good, and then you can go back on each of the special exception criteria.
Excellent. And for Mr. Freilinger's and for Ms. Denon's benefit, the reason why we seem to be very detailed about these specific questions, even though they may not necessarily pertain to your application, is just so that a lot of the applications aren't as straightforward and well put together as the one you brought before us. And a lot of times there are a lot of unanswered questions and questions about the occupation itself that draw us attention to certain points of the application that we have to poke a little bit deeper into. Well, it doesn't appear to be any of those here. So that is why we try to be a little bit slow moving with the details. So thank you for bearing with us here. I guess at this time, I'll take a motion on the floor to approve the home occupation requirements.
Mr. Chair, did we do the public? I don't think we've closed it and opened it to the public yet.
Yes, no, thank you. I did miss that portion. Even though I did ask Brian about the letters and that. So pausing for one moment and taking a step back, Brian, you did mention that we did not receive any phone calls or letters or folks calling in from the public about this. And you're muted.
Yeah, I was just checking to see if there was anybody from the public attending. No, I received no public comments. I received no emails. I've received no letters or phone calls for that matter.
Okay. And it appears that there are no attendees outside of Ms. Denon who are here in attendance who would like to speak. Unless someone's watching the YouTube channel, you have the next few seconds to hop in here. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Okay, seeing no folks in here, we will close the public hearing. Thanks for reminding me, Ms. Shoup. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the criteria for the home occupation.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the criteria, all the criteria for the home occupation section.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I second.
That was Mr. Karen. All right. All those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I will vote yay as well. Excellent. So that takes care of the home occupation. Now we're going to go back to the special exception criteria, and we're going to discuss together as a board. Thank you for your time, Ms. Denon. If we have any questions for you, we will let you know. But at this point, the conversation going forward now will just be amongst the board itself.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So let's go to letter A. The proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation. And I'm going to go through this list alphabetically, forwards and backwards. So if you have a comment, please state it. And for your benefit, Mr. Freilinger, at this point, we state findings of fact or other comments you wish to make about the application. And I'll call on you last just so you can get a flavor for what other folks are going to be answering for the questions here. So I'll start with you, Mr. Bork.
I think the applicant has shown that there's really no negative impact on the environment. This particular home occupation, home baking business, is very common and doesn't really pose any significant issues at all. So I think this is very clear cut.
Excellent. Mr. Karen?
I agree. As was stated, there's no concerns with regard to additional ventilation or emissions, and the residence is on its own septic, so no concerns about additional sewage disposal, and all the equipment is going to be typical residential appliances.
Okay. After Mr. Karen, we have Mr. Howe.
Well, it looks like a good packet. I mean, covered all the bases.
Okay. Awesome. Ms. Shoup?
Yes, I agree. The applicant did a very good job putting the application together, and I think the board did a good job addressing all facts.
Excellent. Mr. Freilinger, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, it's good to know that this is what a good applicant packet looks like. So I appreciate the context from the board members. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. All those in favor of letter A criteria being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I vote aye as well. Letter B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to existing and foreseeable traffic in the vicinity. Mr. Bork.
There is no impact whatsoever. This is strictly a home baking business, and the products are not sold there. It's not a retail business at all. They're all they're brought to another location where they're to be sold by this person, by the applicant. So there's no additional vehicular traffic, due to this business.
Excellent. Mr. Karen.
Agreed, as the appellant and Mr. Brooks said, that there won't be any retail sales here, so no additional traffic there. And there won't be any employees or additional vehicles on that regard as well.
Excellent. Mr. Howe,
Nothing to add. They covered it.
Ms. Shoup,
I agree with the board. She's only going to be making the product there, and that's it.
okay. Do you have any additional question or comments you wish to add, Mr. Freilinger?
The applicant indicated there would not be delivery or pickup vehicles, and I think she responded well, so all good.
Excellent, thank you. So going through all those in favor of letter B criteria being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
excellent. Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I will vote aye as well. Moving on to letter C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems, which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree of municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood. Mr. Bork.
This would have no impact whatsoever on either fire or police.
Mr. Karen.
Agreed, based upon the occupation, it would be typical of a typical residence and no additional fire or police protection would be required.
Mr. Howe.
Agree with the board members.
Excellent. And Ms. Shoup.
I agree with the board.
Okay, Mr. Freilinger.
Agreed.
Excellent. Yeah, the big, we're on letter C here. Yeah, the big goods, they're going to utilize existing kitchen appliances. There's no need for any special industrial equipment, nor municipal fire or police protection outside what would normally be covered on a residential home. So going down the list, Mr. Bork, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I'll vote aye as well. And if I can ask a favor of everyone, if you're not speaking, could you make sure your mic is on mute just so it can avoid some of the background noise from feedback and such. Great, thank you. Letter D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies. We're going to start with Ms. Shoup.
Hard there. Yep, she's not going to be making any physical changes to the property, and what she's doing is just happening within the confines.
Excellent. Mr. Howe?
I think her description of how she's going to conduct this was pretty straightforward.
Excellent. Mr. Karen?
Agreed, being all contained within the residence, there aren't any concerns about site drainage, exterior impacts on the adjacent property or water supplies.
Excellent. And Mr. Bork?
No further comment.
Excellent. Mr. Freilinger?
Agreed. No further comment.
Excellent. Yeah, so these are all normal ingredients and items that would be disposed of down a normal house drain anyways. We're not talking about any, dumping nail polish or anything toxic into the local or into the leach field or anything like that. So going through votes on letter D criteria, Mr. Bork, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I will vote aye as well. So letter E, the proposed use. The proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development. Mr. Bork?
Because everything's inside, it will have no impact on the neighborhood whatsoever.
Mr. Karen?
Agreed, nothing to add.
Okay, Mr. Howe?
I'd say the only concern is that she might have some neighbors that want to come over and try out some of the nice baked goods when they smell her cooking.
Wouldn't that be sweet? Get it. Ms. Shoup?
Yeah, I mean, what she's doing again is completely within the confines of the property. Everyone's going to be completely unaware of what's going on in there. That's going to have zero impact on the neighborhood.
Excellent. As the applicant has stated repeatedly, there are not going to be any customers coming to the driveway. It is within their right to have a sign, but they've indicated they don't necessarily want a sign because there is no retail or display to be seen at the at her home. Mr. Fralinger, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I concur with the other board members.
All right, excellent. Going to go vote on letter E then. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I will vote aye as well. Letter F. Is this property located in the shoreland zone? Mr. Bork.
Yes.
Well, if
Pardon me. The applicant has shown that it meets this criteria, but it's not located in the shoreline zone.
there we go.
Mr.
That
Chair,
has been confirmed by Mr. Longstaff, I take it?
yeah, let me just jump in and say, yes, I can verify that it's not in the shoreline zone.
Thank you. Apologize, getting ahead of myself here. I'll say, Mr. Karen, do you have anything to add?
No.
Mr. Howe,
Nothing.
Ms. Shoup,
No.
Mr. Fralinger?
No.
All right, I do not either. So we're going to go through and vote on this one. Letter F, excuse me. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I will vote aye as well. Let's go on to letter G. The applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use. Mr. Bork,
Yes, the applicant has proven that.
Mr. Karen,
Agreed. Nothing further to add.
Mr. Howe,
Agreed.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes, and the applicant included within her packet the tax card showing ownership.
excellent. Mr. Fralinger.
Nothing to add.
Excellent. Yep. As Ms. Shoup pointed out, there's a copy of the assessor's record showing that he and Mr. Troy Denon are co-owners of the property. Going on to letter H, the applicant has the technical and, oh, excuse me, we need to vote on this. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I vote aye as well. Letter H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section. Mr. Bork.
As stated by the applicant, with 60% equity and cash reserves of $30,000, I think that's certainly sufficient to cover whatever we may require.
Excellent. Mr. Karen,
Agreed. And the typical use of residential appliances proves beyond technical ability.
Mr. Howe,
Nothing to add. It's covered.
Ms. Shoup,
I agree that she has met this qualification. She has presented tonight and said that she has 60% equity in the cash.
Yep. Excellent. Mr. Fralinger, anything to add?
No, we're good.
All right. Excellent. And I don't have anything to add either. They've stated that they have the financial and technical capabilities to do that. It doesn't appear that we're going to be imposing any conditions by the board, but we'll wait until the very end. All those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I vote aye as well. Letter I, the proposed use and the last criteria of the application, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation. Mr. Bork.
As the applicant stated, normal 9 to 5 hours, occasionally evening, but again, this is not going to really have any impact on noise in the neighborhood. So I think the applicant is has given us sufficient evidence that this has been met.
So, Mr. Karen.
Agreed. And as the board previously mentioned, this will be within the confines of the residence and typical to normal uses. So no impacts to the neighborhood.
Mr. Howe.
It's all inside. Just the nice smells outside.
And that's okay. Ms. Shoup.
I think baking is a very compatible use with other people in the neighborhood.
Mr. Fralinger, anything to add?
No, I'd reiterate Ms. Shoup's comments. I think it makes perfect sense.
Excellent. And before I go to a vote, I'll just point out that even though this does seem a bit of a silly question when we're involving this particular home application or home occupation, excuse me, there have been other occupations in the past where someone may want to do a woodworking shop running out of their garage. And if there's a neighbor really nearby, they may not want to hear a belt sander or a planer going at 10 o'clock at night. Needless to say, I don't think we have to worry about hours of operation here. So, Mr. Bork, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Shoup,
Yes.
and I'll vote aye as well. Do I have a motion on the floor to approve appeal number 2700?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve appeal number 2700.
Do I have a second?
A motion to second.
Excellent. All those in favor, Mr. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Bork, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Karen?
Aye.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Shoup?
Yes.
And I will vote aye as well. So appeal number 2700 passes. Congratulations, Ms. Denon, and good luck. I guess that takes care of it for appeals tonight. We're going to move on to zoning board comments. And I guess one comment, and that was brought up earlier, and thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Fralinger, about, I believe it's Mr. Fralinger, with regard to public access during the Zoom call meetings. I guess we'll just have an open discussion about it. I'll start. I guess is it possible, Brian, or from the town standpoint, to add a caveat in the application, or just a supplemental note for each applicant to realize that, we are utilizing Zoom as a primary method to facilitate the application process. There may be technical difficulties, so that we should reinforce that it is critical and crucial for the applicant to include every bit of information that they wish to state in their written physical application. Is there some an additional note or a modification to the website that just states that, just for coverage by the town, just so folks have it reinforces that everybody needs to put everything into their application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe I could probably add a note to the website on the page with the zoning board information. 90% of the applications that we get they're people that contact me first anyway, and we have a discussion about that. So I will try to reinforce that with them verbally as well. And usually we exchange emails because I'm sending them information or whatever. So I'll make sure that I take every opportunity to reinforce that, as well as put a note on the website. I think that's probably the best that we can do. I can also add that in the staff comments to give them at least the opportunity to be prepared if there are things that I feel, in the case of the appeal tonight, I have no idea what information the applicant was going to provide or wished to provide to us. I think the board's comments were spot on in that, you should take every opportunity to make sure everybody has that information, and you're not keeping something in your close to the vest that you didn't get out there in that event. So good point, and we'll certainly make sure that we try to reinforce that going forward for as long as we're using this virtual platform.
Ms. Shoup?
I know when we had switched to virtual meetings, Brian had given me a different checklist to go through at the beginning of the meeting. And one of the things was to point out different ways that people could, at the beginning of the meeting, attend, comment. And I think I honestly stopped doing it because I thought it was pretty straightforward. Go to the town website. If you want to attend, click this link. If you want to do that, maybe we should start reminding people they have a hand, the chat at the beginning of the meeting. And then, I don't think we need to go so far as to say, if you feel like you don't have that, you can table your application. I don't think we need to go that far, but I think maybe just reiterating at the beginning of the meeting, maybe the different avenues to contact. Doesn't the agenda have a phone number on it too? I feel like there's a lot of ways to get in.
I agree. And thank you for mentioning that, Karen. That's an excellent point, because there is a phone number that you can dial into this number. And I will make it a point to mention that note in the future, and I'll make sure I have that number available and stated at the beginning of each call, and we can even paste it in the chat as well. I think that, and then in combination with just adding an extra sentence or two on the website, just reinforcing that, if technical difficulties do occur, the board will do the best they can to accommodate, but we still have an agenda to go through, and we can't necessarily delay with respect to other folks on the agenda that evening.
Mr. Chair, I'd also take the opportunity to just mention to the board that there are opportunities when I review an application, you don't even sometimes see the application that you've the application that you receive in your packets is not the application that I received. There's oftentimes a lot of requests for additional information that in looking at, and it continues to frustrate me, and I don't want to beat the applicants and their professional help to death, but I continue to see the same deficiencies in application after application, and I'm continually contacting the applicant and or their representatives, their engineering firms or whoever they're hiring. It's this stuff. It should be like that because it's the same people, it's the same firms, and I continue to see deficiencies in the application. So, I do try to get that out there. Unfortunately, sometimes the workload gets in the way, and I'm not able to identify all that stuff right up front. So, as I think one of the board members already said tonight, you get one shot at this. Maybe you're lucky and you get a second shot at this before the hearing, but you really got to just a word out there to the applicants. If you're using professionals to help you put your application together, make sure that the information's there, because it oftentimes isn't, and it's very frustrating for me to give you folks an application that's missing information.
Absolutely. No, we certainly appreciate everything that the town does to put all these packets together every single month after month. Mr. Bork?
I just like to make a comment. This is the third municipal zoning board that I've been a member of. And I can attest to the fact that Mr. Longstaff does an exemplary job working with applicants compared to other code enforcement officers that I've worked with in the past. I can tell you that the people who come before us are so much better prepared than what I've seen elsewhere in other municipalities. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Longstaff with us, and he does a great job. So if somebody comes unprepared, it's their own fault.
Any other comments? Mr. Howe?
If we are having technical difficulties, and I wasn't a part of the meeting, and I apologize for that, the last meeting. If that were to happen in the future, and obviously it could happen. Tonight, my camera didn't come on, and then Peter's camera wasn't on for a long time. And then all of a sudden my browser rebooted here and my camera was up. I didn't even have an option to turn it on. Yep. I thought I had a completely new interface with Zoom. My point is, if there are technical difficulties, could we as a board encourage or suggest, recommend that they table? Or is that something that they have to request on their own? That's not something that we can.
We can always, the role of our board, and Mr. Freilinger, for your benefit as well, we're not here to put together their application for them. We can't say, you put this garage here, you really should have put it over here and you'd have a better time of it. That's up for the applicant to work out with Mr. Longstaff and planning and Town of Scarborough staff before they submit their application and come before us. Yeah. With regard to the technical difficulties, though, it's really tough. We're in a real weird state right now for going on a year, and I think the best that we can do is just add the caveat on the website saying that you may experience technical difficulties. Please go to the Town of Scarborough YouTube page with a live video that'll have the telephone number that you can dial in, because fortunately telephones still do work. If those don't, then we really have problems. And I'll state that at the beginning of each meeting as well, where a lot of applicants, they don't have the ability to speak or be seen, but they can still hear most of the time. More often than not, the issue isn't with the audio quality coming from the meeting to the folks who are the attendees. It's just trying to participate. So I'll be better about my own due diligence about stating other means and methods for folks to dial into the meeting and provide that phone call. Because worst case, Chip, if you had some computer difficulties and technical issues with that, you could always call in on your cell phone and utilize a speakerphone that way and just follow along with the application, where it's pretty straightforward in that regard.
Mr. Chair,
And just one.
Go ahead, Chip.
Any idea how much longer we're going to keep going this way? Foreseeable future.
Till everybody gets a vaccine, man.
Oh, good Lord.
Who knows? Well, for the time, we don't have a time frame on this, really, until cases start to go down. I would imagine this is for the foreseeable future, at least for the remainder of this through the summer, anyways. If would be my guess.
Okay.
Mr. Longstaff, you want to say something?
Just to address Mr. Howe's comment too. I think it would be case specific if everything kind of went down and the applicant and or their representative lost all ability to communicate and present the case, then obviously I think we would seek to table it. I don't think we'd take a vote on something that we couldn't weigh in on. So
definitely. And in this case, both professional representatives, the engineer and the attorney for the applicant, were present and delivered a very thorough presentation on the submitted material, all of the submitted material, multiple times actually, because they had submitted it previously as well. So this particular application, we're on 2700 that we approved tonight, is 2695. So there have been 5 applications previous to this one that we have gone through. So they have had a few opportunities to present all of their information in its entirety to the board. And again, as it was stated, you really should have just one shot at this. Other comments?
I'll
Mr.
have one,
Fralinger.
and Mr. Chairman, it kind of feeds off that last one. When you have professional representation in particular, on Appeal 2700, it was an individual coming before the board on her own. Had she had significant technical difficulties, I think we would have been naturally not necessarily sympathetic, but we would have understood that she was standing alone without backup. When you come in with an attorney and with an engineering firm, and I went back and made sure I was boned up on this one on the previous things. If your representation has not been fully briefed on the reasons you're coming to the table with, then that's really your fault. It's not really anything that's incumbent upon this board to make up for you or to give you a pass on. And yeah, and Mr. Longstaff, maybe when you deal with those representatives, you can remind them of that, and that would be offline. It wouldn't necessarily be on that, but representatives who are professionals, who are very well paid attorneys, very well paid engineering firms, should be expected and held to a standard of professional excellence that would allow us to be expedited in our consideration of their appeals.
All right. Excellent comment, Mr. Fralinger. Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I just want to bring up one last thing, and then I'll be quiet. I just 2 things. Wanted to welcome Mr. Fralinger again, and also Alan Foster, who wasn't here tonight. I had a wonderful conversation with them. I think they'll be excellent additions to the board. I also wanted to mention that, again, I think Doreen had sent out emails to everyone to let them know that Maine Municipal Association will be hosting a virtual training for new board members on February 24th from 4 to 7:30 p.m. Unfortunately, it will be virtual, Mr. Howe. It's not an in-person meeting, so but you can register. We can register you for that. There is a cost. The town will pay that cost for board members. So if you have any interest, I know a few of you have already taken advantage of that and gotten signed up. But if any of the others of you want a refresher or want to attend that, just let Doreen or I know, and we'll make sure that you get registered for that. And that's all I have.
No, thank you. Yeah, those are really valuable. I know most of us, if not all of us, have participated in at least one of those. And it basically just kind of goes through all the basics. This is an appeal. Here are the different types of appeals. Here are the different types of boards, the due process that goes forward, and is pretty standard between all the boards as well. So very valuable. Mr. Bork?
Yeah, I just want to make a follow-up comment on what Ms. Longstaff said about signing up for this. It's probably best to do it through Doreen. She can sign you up, because there is a fee associated with this, which they pay directly to the Maine Municipal Board. Otherwise, if you sign up yourself, then you have to get reimbursed by the town. So it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to just do it through Doreen.
Yep. Email Doreen and Brian, and they should, with the whichever workshop you'd like to attend, and they'll be able to handle that for you. Anything else that we want to talk about?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you again, everyone. You've been really welcoming tonight, especially as a new board member. I really appreciate that. Just to let you know, I'm also a member of the Long Range Planning Committee. So that I think is a helpful overlap. And I'll bring the experiences on this committee to bear in the long range discussions we have on the forward growth plans for the town. And I'll bring the Long Range Planning Commission's insights to this committee as well. And I really appreciate the chance to serve with you folks.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Frowning. I really appreciate it. Mr. Howe?
I just wanted to know where the Northern Lights came from in Rudy's background there. Where's that trick coming from?
It's not a trick. If you go out to Central Scarborough, out by Cabela's, near the development where Rudy lives, they're going on right now. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Bork?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
Excellent. Do I have a second, Mr. Karen?
Second.
A second.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
That seems to be a unanimous aye. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great night.
Thank you, you too.
Cheers.